Welcome to my channel. In this video, the topic is why most relationships fail. There's a lot of material on the internet, different attachment styles, different traumas that a person experiences. And there's an overwhelming amount of reasons why relationships fail, even to the point of basic misunderstanding between the male-women dynamic, essentially, because men speak a different language than women. Basically, men are logical, women are emotional, and all those types of things. And yes, all those things have an impact on the quality of the relationship. But in this video, I want to give you a slightly different perspective. In this video, I want to paint a little bit of a different picture that you can start to perhaps explore this in your own relationship. And it can really shift on how you see your partner or how you interact with your partner, how you experience your relationship and things you choose to do. With that said, I want to give you guys this perspective to think about a relationship in a healthy way is between two individuals. These individuals have a certain degree of love within them. They have a degree of love of self. They have a degree of love of others. So they have a healthy self-worth, right? And painting like a healthy kind of dynamic. They have pretty much filled within themselves, right? So they feel full. And you might even notice some people like that, where one person feels empty, depleted, shut down, like they're heavy, right? And then other people feel like they have more life to them. They're more vibrant, they're more dynamic. And when two individuals that have a pretty healthy amount of love in them get together, now they don't need this partner to fulfill them. They don't need someone else to fill some sort of a void inside of them, some empty space, right? And so what happens is they're happy being on their own, but because they have this abundance of love and they have this desire, so they're following this desire that's based in love to share their love with someone else. So they're looking to give love, to share their love with another person and receive love from another person. And for that to magnify their life experience, to have a life where they can share experiences together, they can challenge each other, they can grow together, they can share sexual energy together, they can share heart energy together. So life becomes more vibrant, if you will, right? Because you're adding a dynamic, right? There's a dynamic of another person. And so in that regard, it's a stable, strong, not without challenges, of course, but these challenges make the relationship stronger instead of making it weaker. And so then when this love flows from one person to the other, circulates, love, sexual, heart energy, sexual energy. And so then there's this abundance of love and it gets to the point where there's a desire that is born within them. I want to share this love and give this love and give this life to another being. And that's when they have a desire to have a child. And then so when they have a child, they are overwhelmed with joy and love that they spill out from their abundance of love onto this child. And they nurture this child. They protect this child. They love this child because they have ability to love themselves. They're full, essentially. And so now this child learns about themselves, learn about life through this filter of love. So they learn, oh, this is how I'm lovable, right? I'm protected. The world is a safe place, until they start to individuate and they start to grow and then they start to separate from their parents. But at this point, they've received enough love that they can now nurture themselves. They can support themselves. They can protect themselves through this experience, right? So this energy of life and love flows into this child, fills them up, and then it develops them, nurtures them to the age of individuation. And then at that point, they move forward in their life, again, experiencing life to the point where they want to share that experience with someone else. And again, they find their partner and then they share love with one another until they get to the point where they are overflowed with desire to share this love with the child, so they may have a child. So this is a healthy cycle, right? Same idea can be made an analogy of a tree, right? You have a tree, and then it's fed correctly, right? It grows strong, has strong roots. It has fruit, and fruit is an abundance, right? So the tree doesn't suffer from fruiting and giving the fruit to animals and the humans, and essentially these strong seeds from this tree now grow more trees. So that's like the healthy model. Now, here's what happens most of the time, because uh, the earth is in such a condition where people suffer, struggle. There's so much war, famine. There's all kinds of traumatic experiences that happen on this planet. And some of these experiences can be immigration. Some of these experiences could be suicide, or it could be a loss of property because of some governmental instability or theft. It can be a loss of life, like I said, because of war or some sort of genocide. There's so many things, and throughout history, right? So if you think about it, as far as I know, the the person that's alive today is affected by 7 generations back. So if you think about 7 generations and how much history it has been in the past 7 generations, and how much economic instability, even immigration, where if you immigrate from one country to another, you are basically cut off from your family. Not to like today, where you can get on a plane and a couple hours later you can go visit. Those times, if there's famine in a country, they would get on a boat for months, travel, and then oftentimes never see their family again. If they are able to deliver a letter, that's lucky, right? Or there's war, or there's all kinds of events that happen. Think of a family as an organism, right? Think of it as this container, right? And we're looking at the flow of love, right? Because that's what we're talking about, flow of love and flow of life within this container as it circulates, just like an organism. And life and love is like blood, right? Or lymph. So it's like circulating and nurturing, nourishing. Now, what happens with these events is traumatic events is that there's a trauma that is stored within the family, right? So it could be an abortion, it could be a child death in a childbirth, right? It could be infidelity, it could be all kinds of things. So all of these traumatic events now create these injuries within the family system. And so what happens is, as that happens, naturally, we are meant to heal these events. What I mean by healing is by allowing this traumatic experiences to flow through us, right? For example, if somebody lost their spouse, what they would do is they would grieve that spouse to the point where all of that grief leaves their body, right? And then they can essentially not be so affected by it. But most of the time, and how we're basically raised and have been raised for thousands of years, is not to allow ourselves to experience these emotions, not to allow ourselves to heal these emotions. Right? Only recently we started to focus on therapy type modalities and working through it, right? And even then, it's very limited. If we really look at how much it takes for someone to really feel through a traumatic emotion, we're talking about at times hours of crying or shaking, if it's fear, or processing all of this negative experiences that we go through. Right. So think about these types of events. And so what happens, they get trapped within the individual, they get trapped within the family system, because when one individual of the family system is affected, it affects the whole family system. And so what happens now is that love that freely circulates now has an injury of suicide, an injury of immigration, tearing apart from your ancestors, all kinds of war, all kinds of things. And so what happens now, there's trauma in the system. So instead of love circulating, now that love starts to shrink, there's less love. And what happens? Disease happens, right? It starts to develop this void of love. That's what I would call it. And then what happens is people are still having children, people are still reproducing, and when you're having children from a place of with lack of love, this is what happens. Two parents get together, let's say, and they come from families with trauma. Now, they are already coming from a place of lack. So that they didn't get a fill of love from their family because of those traumatic events, let's say. And so what happens is now they're in a place of lack. And so there's lack of self-love. There's lack of self-worth. Perhaps there's a feeling of not belonging. There's all kinds of beliefs, all kinds of painful emotions and experiences trapped within this person. So now what happens is that when they're looking for a partner, they're not looking for a partner to share their overflow of love. They're looking for a partner to fill the void that's inside of them. So if they feel like nobody loves me, they're going to look for a partner who's going to love them, right? If they feel like they don't belong, they want to look for a partner that will help them belong. If they feel like they're not confident enough, they're going to look for a partner who's going to make them feel confident, right? And then if they have a feeling that they can't financially support themselves or they have insecurities around financial security, they're going to look for someone who looks like or is able to have that financial security. So then they can fill that void through another person, right? Usually we call that codependent relationship, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily work that well. That model doesn't work well. Why? Because when we're looking for someone to fill the void, guess what? We're going to find somebody with their own version of their void. And then the two people meet and match perfectly, right? This is why this whole idea of anxious avoidant, anxious attached, they find one another, right? Or the codependent finds the narcissist, right? So codependent is lack of self-love. Narcissist is self-focused, right? Not necessarily have self-love, but they definitely bring their attention to themselves and they emanate self-love. And so basically when they come together, their injuries match and their hopes for this person to fulfill them, to fill that emptiness, to fill that void for them. And during the honeymoon phase, this kind of gives them that temporary feeling, let's say, right? Because we're in our best selves, our energy system opens up because our traumas meet and then they open up our chakras and then this energy starts flowing, right? So we start to feel strong sexual attraction. We are in this limerence stage, right? Which is our fantasy. So we've got this fantasy based kind of view of this person in front of us. And now it's like, this person is going to fulfill my every hope and dream. In fact, a good question would be to ask when you feel this feeling of fantasy type experience, this limerence experiences, what's the promise, right? Like when I get with a person like, and I'm really in love, but I can feel that I'm coming from a place of lack. And the question is, what promise does this person give me, right? The promise to love me, promise to protect me, promise to cherish me, promise to see me, promise to meet me, right? There's all these promises that we project onto this person. And these promises are basically our unmet needs from our childhood, right? That we did not get filled with that love. And so we're walking around with this void, waiting to find someone to finally fill it, right? And of course, that's not how it works because as many of us realize after the honeymoon phase comes the reality check and all the things we loved about this person, we start to annoy us and then we feel betrayed because like you were so nice in the beginning and now you're so mean and you were so attentive and now you don't care. So it's like all of these things because essentially we're putting the responsibility to fulfill us onto this partner who's doing the same thing. Essentially. And so these two people get together from this place of lack, right? And then this lack quite quickly starts to show itself. And so now there is a void within these two people. And they're either they break up and then they find another version until they find something that kind of fits, or they just stay together in this trauma bond type thing. And then they feel that having a child is probably a good solution, right? For different reasons. So For some mothers, for example, some women feel this feeling that unless I'm a mother, I'm not really a woman, right? This comes back from cultural backgrounds, right? So the purpose of a woman is to be a mother. And unless she's a mother, she doesn't really fulfill her purpose, right? There's a lot of shame attached to it. So that's one reason why a woman, for example, would want to be a mother. Or the father might feel that he didn't get to live his life and he wants a boy so that he can live his dreams that did not come to be through his son, right? So he has all these expectations on his son to do the things he never got to do and to live through them. Or it could be that he really wants to feel loved by a woman and he doesn't feel loved by his wife. He doesn't feel loved by his mother. And so then he's looking to have a daughter who's going to love him and pedestalize him and get his need met through there, right? Or also a mother who never felt that unconditional love. She's looking to have a child so then she can love this child, so she can feel what it's like to have this love circulating and be loved by this child. So she can finally feel loved and valued, right? Or perhaps the person never experienced a family, like a really full, happy family. And so they project this fantasy of my family. I'm going to create a happy family and I'm going to get fulfilled through this family, right? There's so many things here that are unconsciously we project onto having a child that isn't actually based on wanting to give unconditional love because we are full and we want to share this love with a child, right? Oftentimes we are not full, we are lacking something, and we hope that having a child will actually fulfill this empty space within me, right? And so what happens is a child is born and a child receives this gift of being alive. And it's a beautiful gift. And you can see this child is full of life, full of joy, is completely like open and honest and just vibrant. And so this child goes into the world. And then what happens is they very quickly start to feel this void in the family. So then they feel like I can't, of course, this is not conscious, but there's kind of sense is like, how can I live my life fully when there's a void behind me? There's an empty space, right? And so the child, instead of living their life forward, what they do is they turn around and they start living their life backwards, right? So they're giving back where they should be moving forward, right? So for example, this love that the mother needs so desperately. So the little boy feels this love and feels this loyalty to his mother, right? To take care of her needs, right? So it gives her this life that was given to him. And so he oftentimes may feel like he's the adult and the mother is the child because he's the one giving her love. He's the one feeding her, where it's actually the natural order is that she's supposed to feed him. Another scenario could be that there's this imbalance between mother and father where there's not enough love between them. And so like a daughter, for example, will step in and start to be a surrogate spouse for the father. So she's going to start to be caring and nurturing and understanding and listening to him and his issues, or a little boy can do the same for his mother. And so they start to feed back into the family to try to create that wholeness. And the family is sucking also that love out of the child. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's very traumatic for the child that they either, if they get into romantic relationships, they're repeating these cycles, or they stay single, or they can't really get their life in order because their family is suffering and they're loyal to the family. So actually being happy and fulfilled in their life would be a betrayal, right? Again, unconscious, right? So they're trying to bring this love back into the family. And by doing so, they're really giving up on their own life. And then, of course, at some point, everyone has needs. So they get to this point, when is it my turn? When is it my turn to receive? And then they find a partner again and they project all these needs onto the partner. And the partner projects all these needs and demands onto them. And they get to a point where they want the child because that's going to keep their family together or fulfill some more needs. And so this traumatic cycle continues over and over again. Right? Now, why is it important, now that I've painted this picture, why is it so important to see this objective? Right? Because If you are walking through a fog and you're without understanding what's going on in front of you, you're making assumptions about your reality and you're taking action based on those assumptions. y- How likely are you actually going to be successful at changing it? Right? Now, if you can understand and you can start to tune into these subtleties, right? And there's so much material out there to get to understand the subject a bit more. For example, family constellation therapy is a really great modality at actually seeing all of these dynamics, right? And once you start to recognize that, oh, this is what I'm doing, I'm actually projecting all these unmet needs onto my partner or onto my child, or I want to have a child because of these unmet needs. And perhaps the hierarchy of my family is quite imbalanced where I'm the child, but I feel like I'm the adult and I'm the parent to my parents. And when you start to recognize these things, instead of trying to fill in that empty space within yourself or try to fill in the empty space for your parent, what you can start to do is first recognize that your parents are your parents and recognize certain loyalties that you have and take a look and see if those behaviors that you have are actually serving you or them, right? Or are they more based on feeling guilty if you don't take care of your parents' emotional needs, right? If you actually lived your own life, what would be some of the emotions that you would have to face? Or having a partner, looking at the partner as more like a mirror that reflects your own emotional injuries, your own needs. It's reflecting your own insecurities or longings or emotional traumas and so forth, right? So not looking at your partner as a way to fill in the void, but looking at your partner as a way to reflect, mirror back what you need to heal within yourself, right? So for example, even let's say a codependent woman attracts a male narcissist, right? So in this case, the male narcissist has this void of love because it's like sucking that love out of the space. It's all about me. So he finds this codependent woman who is all about empathy and compassion, right? Because she's focused on external. So she's not really focused on herself. She's only focused on others and he's only focused on himself. So in this case, he finds her and he's, wow, she's incredible. She's going to give me all these beautiful feelings because I like being focused on myself and I want everyone to love me and praise me. But truly what he's actually doing is this person's actually not seeing themselves accurately, right? And they're actually not being humble to their own emotions because underneath the facade of this grandiose confidence, there's a lot of insecurity. So it's not really looking at that. Now, on the side of the codependent woman, for example, she is looking at this man in this example as someone who's confident and loves themselves. And deeply what they want to do is love themselves. So they're looking to be fulfilled. If I love this man enough, then he's going to love me and then I'll finally be fulfilled. And so she gets trapped in that. What they actually need to learn from one another is that she needs to learn self-love and he needs to learn actually love for others, right? That's what's actually reflected, but they're not doing it by fulfilling one another. They're actually doing it as a reflection of one another, right? So another example could be someone who's a natural caretaker and another one who felt really under nurtured and all those types of things. And so they get into this codependent relationship until resentment starts to build and so on and so forth. So in this case, again, looking at each other as a mirror, reflecting back to your family, what's been going on there, right? How are you bringing your histories here and how are you mirroring these histories for one another? And then using modalities such as family constellation work, arts work, somatic therapy, groups, support groups, therapy groups. Oh, there's so many resources, right? Sometimes it's depending on the degree of trauma. Sometimes it's just changing your behavior, right? It's, for example, if you're caretaking, challenging yourself and stopping those caretaking behaviors and then feeling the feelings that come. Or, for example, focusing on yourself instead of focusing on another, right? And then learning self-love and personal responsibility through that process. Okay. But it's really important. And the whole idea of this video is paint your picture that it's the family as an organism. And if the organism is sick, it's going to produce a fruit that is going to carry that void within the fruit or the child, right? And then the child is, again, starting to try to fix that within the family. And then when the child wants to create his own or her own family, partners up with someone who's also in the traumatized state. And lack of love cannot create more love. What needs to happen is that those traumas within the family need to heal and things need to go in their rightful place. And then the love starts to flow into the child, flow into the partners as they heal their emotional injuries and release those false beliefs. And then when they come together, they can come together because they're full of love and want to share that love with each other instead of being void of love and hoping to feel fulfilled by getting that love from your partner, which never ends well, as many of you have experienced. So I hope this video made some sense and was beneficial. If you have questions, put them in the comments down below. If there's another subject you'd like me to cover, please leave that in the comments as well. And as always, I wish you love, and I'll see you in my next video.